Joe, I wanted to start off not just because you're a Yankee fan from way back, but what they continue to do is incredible. I mean, the best 56 game starts since 1930, I think it was. And listen, there's no way to sit here and talk about the postseason because we know there's a lot of randomness that goes on in there, and things can happen before that. But I know I asked you this before, but I just kind of want to get into it again. I mean, just in terms of regular season Yankees teams, I mean, how special is this in just the list of the greatest regular season Yankee teams? Does this team belong in the discussion, or is it too early?
Oh, of course. I mean, you're talking about a team that's playing 700 baseball for half a season. Even though I can look at the roster and say, there are some significant flaws here. What they do on the run prevention side just is one of the most remarkable things I've seen as a baseball fan. This is a team that is on pace to allow fewer than 500 runs, which has only been done something like 8 times in a 162-game season. They're on pace to be the best team, the best run prevention team of any team that's ever played in the DH League. It's really something the way they miss bats, but they do it in a way that they don't throw a lot of balls. You're talking about a team that's second in the league in strikeouts and second in the league in fewest walks allowed. That kind of combination is exceptional. They don't really give up home runs. And that's relative to the league, Bernie. This is a year where home runs are harder to hit, but the Yankees second in home runs allowed by their pitchers in a good hitter's park still. They get the most out of their pitchers. We've talked before about, they went out and signed Garrett Cole, but they rehabbed Jordan Montgomery and Luis Severino, both back from Tommy John surgery. They're basically pitching at the level of a number 2 starter now. They traded for Jameson Taillon, who looks like the prospect he appeared to be coming through the Pirates system. You look at that bullpen, and Aroldis Chapman has been hurt. Chad Green's out for the year. Jonathan Loaisiga has been out. And it's just a bunch of fairly anonymous guys going out there and throwing zeros, whether it's Clay Holmes, who now throws 80% sinkers and is basically a right-handed Zach Britton, just hanging zero after zero. It's really a remarkable job. And I know a lot of people just say, well, they have $200 and some odd million to spend on payroll. I get that objection, but when you look at the players who are playing well for them, it really has very little to do with the money and a lot to do with the player development.
And I agree with that. I really do. And, by the way, they've spent a lot of money for a long, long time. And there's no guarantee of anything. You do have an advantage, but there's been a lot of disappointing Yankee teams, relative to what they were spending. So, I'm with you on that one all the way. What's it going to cost? What's it going to cost the Yankees to get Aaron Judge to sign his autograph onto a contract?
I think it's a complicated question because Judge will be 31 next year. And if you look at the history of players who are 6'6" and above, Judge is 6'7", it's really bad. It's Dave Winfield. It's a couple of good Frank Howard years, and then it's really nothing. Players of that height tend to age very poorly. And the Yankees have already, they already will have gotten most of Aaron Judge's prime as he hits the market. I don't think you want to get into the 8 and 9 year range with a player like this. I don't think you necessarily want to make him the highest paid position player in the league. I think you're looking for the Yankees and say, hey, can we keep this at 175, something like that? And if you're Judge, of course, you haven't really made superstar money. This is going to be your one chance to do it. You want to go out and see if some team will give you, $300 million over 8 or 9 years. I think it's a big bridge to cross. And the Yankees they're willing to spend money, but they spend it smartly. And I do think the history of very tall players is going to play into the issue of how much they really want to spend on Aaron Judge.
Joe Sheehan with us, the baseball analyst from the Joe Sheehan newsletter, which I've been receiving for a long time. And it's I just file every one that I get and put it into a library, a digital library, and often go back and consult things because I know he's covered a topic. And I want to either remember what I have forgotten or I want to learn it anew. So it's so valuable to read these things. And whether you're a media person or just a fan, if you love baseball, the newsletter is fantastic. I wanted to ask you this, and this is, again, almost like a contract-related thing, but I haven't talked about it this week, which is silly because it was a good topic. But what is your reaction, or what was your reaction to Freddie Freeman? And not only going back to Atlanta, and that was That was pretty over the top. I'm not criticizing him, but that was like that one was really strong, emotionally and everything else. And then you had the Kershaw, a little bit of a challenge. Like, well, I hope we're not second fiddle, because he noting how much Atlanta and Freddie Freeman love each other. Now he's apparently firing his agent over the contract that wasn't consummated with Atlanta. There's a lot there. I mean, do you have any thoughts on this?
I appreciate Freddie Freeman probably would have preferred to be in Atlanta. I will say that Freddie Freeman is a millionaire. He's one of the most accomplished people in his own, his own career, his own industry. He's a husband and he's a father. And at the end of the day, he signed the contract. If he really wanted to stay with the Atlanta Braves, that's a phone call. That's a text message. The idea that and I talk about this a lot when it comes to Scott Boras. People have this image of agents, and particularly Boras, as these Senegalese who tell the players what to do. I'm sorry, everybody's over 21 here. If Freddie Freeman wanted to be a Brave, he could have stayed a Brave. If Freddie Freeman signed his name to the contract in Los Angeles, I don't think you get to go back now and say, well, I never really wanted to be there. And what I do think happens, Bernie, I think over time memories change. You think you remember something, you remember you had a conversation, you had a text message. I'm not sure anybody is a reliable narrator today of what happened back in February. But I do come back to this idea that Freddie Freeman's a grown man, and if he wanted to stay in Atlanta, he could have stayed in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, because you need to be on top of your own business. Number one, I mean, and as far as I can tell, Joe, I mean that the agency has an excellent reputation. I don't claim to know Casey close, but I know players, Cardinals players who have had him as an agent, and they say glowing things about him. So. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is it was kind of a turnoff to me, and I didn't want it to be. But what did you make of Kershaw saying what he said? I thought that was maybe I thought that was very interesting.
Well, especially given Kershaw, who's not somebody who mouths off a whole lot, and is,
right,
of course, the longest-serving Dodger. He'll be a Hall of Famer as a Dodger. For him to step up and say something, I think that's frustrating for him, because he wants to win a championship, and he doesn't want guys necessarily who are just treating his team, treating the uniform that he's played in as second choice. I will say this, though. I can't imagine Clayton Kershaw doesn't understand that the Dodgers weren't second choice, right? I mean, they were second choice.
Right.
It's very clear that Freddie Freeman, even back in February, wanted to stay in Atlanta. I said all along I thought he would end up in Atlanta. Anybody who thinks the Dodgers weren't second choice is deluding themselves.
Joe Sheehan with us. Part of the Yankees is, I was watching the Houston series. I didn't watch every inning, but I was grabbing as much as I could, over the weekend. And it was fun baseball to watch. But I wanted to ask you about the Astros. I mean, they got an excellent record. I think maybe to an extent the idea, well, this team has changed so much. Well, it's changed. I don't know that it's to the extent that some people say. There's still a lot of familiar names there. But what is it about the Astros that have enabled them to sort of pivot with some new players, and they're kicking butt the way they've been, for quite some time now?
I go back to the same thing as the Yankees. Now, the Astros are also a good offensive team, but they're a great run prevention team. They've allowed second fewest runs in the league. Justin Verlander has come back, and if you didn't know what year it was, and I told you it was 2012, you would absolutely believe it by the way Verlander's pitching. They've got that homegrown pitching, though. You look at what they got out of Framber Valdez. Jose Urquidy's been up and down. Christian Javier once Saturday or Sunday, Bernie, with the 13 strikeouts over 7 innings. He was absolutely incredible over the weekend. We saw Luis Garcia. We saw what he did in last year's postseason. He's been very good this year. All of that homegrown pitching has helped turn this Astros team, which isn't great offensively and is considerably worse tonight. They're playing without Jeremy Pena and Yordan Alvarez after that collision at yesterday's game. So they don't look necessarily so hot tonight, but they will continue to give you 6 good innings a night on the mound. And they're still working out the bullpen. It hasn't been terribly good. It's been a weak spot so far. But, again, it's a team that keeps you from scoring more necessarily than it blows you out.
Joe Sheehan with us. Joe, the Cardinals are off today. They open a 3-game series at Philly. Then they go to Atlanta for 4, and then Philly comes here for 4. Just a little sketch on both of those teams, starting with the Phillies. We know that they fired Joe Girardi. We know that Bryce Harper, now is going to be out a long time for the fractured thumb. What kind of team are the Phillies? What should Cardinals fans look for? Are they as bad defensively as sort of portrayed? Tell us what they do well and what's ugly about them.
Well, oddly, they're actually a little bit better defensively now because with Harper hurt, they can actually play Schwarber or Castellanos, who are two terrible defensive outfielders. They can put those guys back at DH, and the outfield gets a little bit better. They can play Vierling and Moniak out there at the same time. But yeah, it's one of those teams, Bunny, where they wanted to be a team where we're just going to sign a bunch of hitters and bludgeon people, and they didn't build a good enough offense for that. When you're going to do that, you got to go out and put a 900-run offense on the field. And they didn't have that. They got Didi Gregorius, not that great at shortstop. They didn't have much in the way of a center fielder. Gene Segura was a good, not great player. He's actually hurt now as well. I think they built an 83, 84-win team that, in the absence of Segura and Harper, is a below 500 team. So if the Cardinals, you're looking at playing the Phillies a lot and hoping to beat them. Still tough up front with Nola and Wheeler. Ranger Suarez has been up and down, but he's a very effective left-hander. Bullpen isn't good, the defense isn't good, and the offense isn't good enough. So it's really a 500 team at this point. Yes, I believe there are I think there are 8 teams above 500 in the National League, and I bet a fair amount of money that the Phillies won't stay there.
The Braves are 21-5 in June, and it seems that they've been damn good across the board. So what will the Cardinals be walking into when they go to Atlanta for 4 games early next week?
The Braves made one seemingly innocuous move about a month ago. They promoted a center field prospect by the name of Michael Harris II. Harris probably isn't ready to hit in the major leagues, but the upgrade defensively from Guillermo Heredia to Harris has made a huge difference in their defense. They now have, when Acuna plays, one of the best defensive outfields in the game, backing up a good, not great rotation. Charlie Morton started to pitch better, which has helped them a lot. They're missing Kenley Jansen right now. Kenley Jansen has had heart problems going back to his days with the Dodgers. He's actually on the IL at the moment, hoping to get him back healthy. I look at this team. It's roughly the team that won the World Series last year. Jock Peterson's gone. Eddie Rosario is actually out with an eye issue. So they've had some injury issues, but, the core talent, Louis, I keep calling you Louis Bernie. I'm so sorry. I talked to a man named Louis Molina in
Joe.
for 20 years now.
No, I know, because I get your newsletter and you always promote like what stations you're going to be. No, man, I don't take it personally at all. Some of the conversations I've had with you on the air where I'm stumbling around and, I'm surprised I called you Joe correctly rather than Jimmy or something.
One of the few
but
guys
no, don't worry.
I've been talking to longer than I've been talking to you. So.
No,
this Braves team is the real thing. I think, they've closed the gap between the Mets to 3. The Mets and the Braves will play, I believe it's 9 games in 21 days wrapped around the All-Star break. I think by the end of that, the Braves will be back in first place. They are a truly dangerous team.
Joe, that's all I got for you. The Brewers and the Cardinals are going to do their thing. I don't know what to make of it. Brewers get Woodruff back. That helps a lot. The Cardinals have actually done, I think, all things considered with their pitching staff, a lot of things jumbled around. They've actually come through that okay. But seems to me, maybe you can offer one quick theory. The Cardinals have the number 2 run differential in the National League. They're 4th in runs per game, and they're also top. I think they're 3rd in the National League, maybe 4th in runs allowed per game. They run the bases really well. Their defense is highly rated, both outs above average and defensive runs saved. Yet they're in second place. I'm confused as to why they're in second place. They're starting pitching. The FIP's not all that hot, but they're starting pitching ERA, even with all the turmoil, is actually surprisingly good. I don't know why they're in second place. I'm trying to figure that out.
Well, you had a note in your column today. They're outplaying they're underplaying their Pythag by 3 games. That's
right.
Not a lot at this point in the year. If a strike gets called correctly last night, it's a 2-game difference. So I wouldn't put too much stack in that. That's the way the runs get distributed earlier in the year. They had a couple of blowouts that have inflated their run prevention. I will say that they've got to get the rotation straightened out. They've got nothing out of Flaherty, and I don't know when they will get anything out of Flaherty. They really haven't gotten a whole lot out of Steven Matz, although Matt's underlying performance was much better than his ERA, which I believe was above 6.
Right.
I want to see what they can do at this deadline. Years ago, the Cardinals had a pretty good run of picking up players at the trade deadline that were impactful. This team probably needs that kind of input. I'm not sure. I like Matthew Liberatore, but as you pointed out, he hasn't been able to get righties out of AAA or in the majors. I think they probably got to go out and get the guy that Flaherty was supposed to be for them, whether that's Frankie Montas, whether that's Luis Castillo. I'm not sure who the name's going to be. But I think the Cardinals have to dip into that farm system, which certainly they don't really want to do, and add that number 1/number 2 starter.
Are you as I don't know how to explain this because it sounds like my mind's blown over how great Goldschmidt has been. And I didn't expect him to be this, kind of rickety, broken down guy by now. Don't get me wrong. But in 2019, there were some traces of like, oh, yeah, well, this is kind of the beginning of the decline type thing. And this guy has just been outrageously good the last 2 years, especially this year. And look, you've been watching these things and monitoring trends for a long time. Just your general opinion of Paul Goldschmidt in 2022.
He's done the work to stave off those declines. One of the things you'll see in older players is that the strikeout rate and the walk rate will both rise. And in Goldschmidt's case, he actually has an above-average contact rate right now. In a league that's striking out 23, 24% of the time, he's considerably under that number. He's always had a relatively short stroke. I think that helps as you get older. I mentioned Judge earlier. Judge has a lot of moving parts. Goldschmidt doesn't have those moving parts. He's a pretty quick bat-to-ball guy. I think that helps as, the hand-eye gets a little bit slower. The quick twitch gets a little bit slower. I think he's able to survive that a little bit better because it isn't really a very long swing. So that's one of the things. But a lot of it is just keeping yourself in shape, keeping yourself in the game. We talked, I think, recently about the fact that he's not a one-dimensional player. He was a Gold Glove caliber first baseman. He's still not, if he's not quite on that level, he's still good. He was a very good base runner, both stealing bases and running the bases, similar to a first baseman you might remember from the last decade, Al Pujols. Had a lot of similar qualities.
Right.
I think that's one of the things we're seeing. We're seeing the aging of a complete player as opposed to the aging of a player who had limited skill set. So it's a ton of fun to watch. I mean, Goldschmidt, I think he had one of the great nicknames. I'm not sure they still use it in St. Louis, but when he was with Arizona, they called him Captain America. I love that as a nickname. So, it's great to see him aging a certain way. I believe there's only 2 years left on the contract now at this point.
I think so. After this year, I think that's what it is. Something else.
That's going to end up being one of the all-time great extensions. You got to give the Cardinals full credit. I think I said this before, so I definitely did not like that deal because I thought he was going to decline a little more rapidly than this, and he hasn't. Yeah,
I'm there with you. I just assumed there would be a decline. Joe, before we go, first of all, I hope you have some fun over this long 4th of July holiday. I know you'll be watching a lot of ball, but I just hope you enjoy it. I know you'll be writing too. But I also want you to, again, we want to sell some subscriptions to the newsletter, which is indispensable, and appreciate all your efforts there. Tell us about the newsletter and the best way for people to get it.
Yeah, I'll be working a lot this weekend because I actually took last week off. I went to Chicago, see friends, play some golf.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to be working through the holiday weekend and doing a lot of writing. Check out what I do at joesheehan.com. If you go there right now, you'll see a piece I wrote yesterday about the Yankees and their run prevention, focused on Clay Holmes, who they got from Pittsburgh last year, who has been one of the best relievers in baseball this year. So check that out at joesheehan.com. It is a subscription product. You can see rates and information there about how to subscribe. I write about baseball. That's the simplest way to do it. It's not heavily stat head, but there's definitely some numbers in there. I write about off-field issues, on-field issues. The one thing I tend not to do is write about non-baseball stuff. I don't really believe in stick to sports on Twitter, but I do believe in stick to sports kind of in my newsletter. So
right,
you're not going to see me riffing on the Supreme Court. As much as I have opinions about it, you always see me riffing on it.
I can vouch for that. You don't go into that stuff in your newsletter. It's all baseball all the time. So thanks, Joe. And again, joesheehan.com. And hopefully some people will be curious enough to try it and subscribe.
Thanks, Brian.
We'll look forward to those newsletters coming in over the busy weekend. Take care, my friend.
Have a good 4th.
You too, brother. That's our guy, Joe Sheehan.